welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into a true crime mystery that really captivated the nation.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about Gregory de Villers.
Yeah, okay.
He was found dead under some really suspicious circumstances. And, we're talking like toxic marriage, a workplace affair, and an opioid that's going to become like a key piece of this puzzle. You ready?
Yeah, absolutely. This case is interesting because it kind of starts out like a tragic love story. We have Gregory, who is a charismatic guy who moved to the U.S. from France. And then you have Kristin, who's his wife, who works as a toxicologist.
Okay.
She studies the effects of poison. Kind of ironic, right?
Yeah, a little on the nose.
Hey, great.
So we've got
Yeah,
Gregory living the American dream.
Yeah.
And then Kristin, who is battling, some of her own demons, including a past with drug addiction.
Right.
But she's working with drugs every day. It's like,
Recipe for disaster.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So what was their life like in San Diego?
So on the surface, they seem to have it all. Successful careers, a loving relationship.
Yep.
But like any good mystery, things aren't always what they seem.
Right.
And Kristin's past struggles really add a layer of complexity to this whole thing, especially given what she does for a living.
And this is where things take a dark turn, right? The day Gregory is found dead. What makes this case so strange from the start?
So it's November 6th, 2000. Paramedics get a frantic call from Kristin saying Gregory's not breathing. What they find is chilling. Gregory is lying lifeless, surrounded by rose petals.
Rose petals?
Rose petals. It's a detail that seems really calculated, almost staged, and it immediately raises red flags for investigators.
Yeah, that's both eerie and unusual. It feels orchestrated.
Exactly. It gets even more suspicious because Kristin initially claimed they were leftovers from a bouquet that Gregory had given her.
Okay.
But later, investigators found out she bought a single red rose the day that he died.
Interesting.
So seemingly insignificant detail.
Yeah, but so telling. So we've got this mysterious death, potential suicide, and then the rose petals that are just screaming that something's off.
Right.
So what did the initial report say about how Gregory actually died?
So this is where it gets really interesting. Kristin's initial claim was that Gregory, who she said was distraught and struggling with their marriage, committed suicide by overdosing. She pointed to his use of clonazepam, which is a tranquilizer.
Okay.
But the toxicology report threw a wrench in that whole story because it showed that there was a lethal dose of fentanyl in Gregory's system.
Fentanyl. That's not your average painkiller.
No, not at all. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, many times stronger, more potent than heroin or morphine.
Wow.
Even a tiny amount can be deadly. And what makes it even more suspicious is that Gregory wasn't prescribed fentanyl.
Okay.
Access to it is usually really controlled, mostly found in medical settings.
Like where Kristin worked. Wow. Okay, so alarm bells must be going off for investigators at this point. Something's not adding up. What happens next? Like, walk us through how this investigation unfolded.
So naturally, the San Diego Police Department zeroed in on Kristin, and they start digging into her life. And things quickly unravel when they uncover an affair that she was having with her supervisor at the medical examiner's office. His name, Dr. Michael Robertson.
Okay.
So on top of that, colleagues start reporting that Kristin's behavior had been erratic in the months leading up to Gregory's death.
Okay, so we've got a workplace affair. We've got strange behavior. Did investigators uncover any hard evidence that linked Kristin to Gregory's death?
They did, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Remember the fentanyl, how we talked about how it's really carefully controlled?
Yeah.
Well, investigators found out that several fentanyl patches and vials went missing from the medical examiner's office right around the time that Gregory died.
Oh, no.
And guess who was responsible for logging those drugs in and out?
You're kidding, Kristin.
Kristin herself. It's like something out of a movie, right?
Yeah.
But remember, we're dealing with real people here.
Yeah.
Everyone has their side of the story.
That's true. What was Kristin's explanation for all of this? Did she have a defense?
Oh, she did. Kristin's defense team argued that Gregory, heartbroken over the affair and their marriage falling apart, took his own life. They claimed he stole the fentanyl and ended things on his own terms.
So it becomes a classic case of he said, she said.
Right.
What evidence did they present to support the idea that Gregory committed suicide?
Well, they focused on Gregory's supposed knowledge of Kristin's infidelity and his history of depression. Kristin even took the stand, testifying that Gregory seemed withdrawn that morning and admitted to taking some of her medication.
Oh, wow.
Her defense really hammered home the point that Gregory had reasons to be despondent, painting him as a man pushed to his breaking point.
But the prosecution wasn't buying it, were they? What was their argument against this being a straightforward suicide?
Exactly. The prosecution painted a very different picture. They argued that Kristin, terrified of her secret life being exposed, poisoned Gregory with fentanyl to keep him quiet. They proposed that she administered it while he was sleeping, either through a patch or injection, ensuring a fatal overdose.
That sends chills down my spine. It sounds so calculated, like something from a true crime novel.
It's a chilling thought. And to strengthen their case, the prosecution brought up the missing fentanyl, the inconsistencies in Kristin's story, like the single red rose.
Yeah.
They emphasized her knowledge of drugs as a toxicologist.
Right.
This wasn't just someone who stumbled across fentanyl. This was a trained professional who knew exactly how lethal it could be.
Wow, the plot thickens. So we have two very different narratives here. A heartbroken husband driven to suicide versus a calculated murder to bury a web of secrets. This had to be a captivating trial.
It absolutely was. The trial of Kristin Rossum became a national sensation. The media was captivated by this story of a seemingly perfect marriage gone wrong.
With such a complex case and so much public attention, what was it like inside the courtroom? What were some of the key moments?
The atmosphere was electric. You could feel the tension in the air as everyone waited for the next piece of evidence, the next witness testimony. The prosecution knew they had a tough job ahead of them, trying to convince the jury that Kristin had deliberately poisoned Gregory. They needed to prove intent, and that's not always easy, especially when you're dealing with a substance as potent as fentanyl.
So they really honed in on her knowledge of fentanyl and how she could have used it without raising suspicions. What about the missing fentanyl from her work? Did that end up being the smoking gun?
It was a pivotal piece of evidence for the prosecution. They presented evidence that the missing fentanyl disappeared around the time Gregory died, and that Kristin was the one who had logged those drugs in and out. This, combined with the fact that fentanyl isn't typically taken orally, like how the defense suggested Gregory might have consumed it, really poked holes in Kristin's story.
So the prosecution presented a compelling case. But Kristin maintained her innocence throughout the trial, right? She never wavered from her story.
Never. She took the stand, tearfully professing her love for Gregory and denying any involvement in his death. Her defense team continued to highlight Gregory's history of depression, reminding the jury that he had his own struggles and could have been suicidal. They argued that the prosecution couldn't definitively prove how the fentanyl was administered, suggesting reasonable doubt.
It's a classic case of two sides presenting very different interpretations of the same events. It really makes you think about how we perceive information and form opinions based on what we hear. What did the jury ultimately decide? Was Kristin's defense enough to convince them? It really is a testament to how complex truth can be. So what was the jury's verdict?
After weeks of intense testimony and deliberation, the jury found Kristin Rossum guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Wow, a life sentence. That's a heavy weight to carry. Did the story end there? Were there any appeals or further developments?
Kristin's legal team did file numerous appeals, claiming an unfair trial and pointing to the prosecution's inability to definitively prove how the fentanyl was administered. They also raised questions about the handling of evidence, particularly the missing fentanyl from the medical examiner's office. However, despite their efforts, Kristin's conviction has been upheld in multiple appeals.
So despite her claims of innocence, Kristin remains in prison, and Gregory's family is left grappling with the loss of their loved one. This case, with its twists and turns, really captures the essence of a true crime mystery.
It does. The case of Gregory de Villers is a stark reminder that things aren't always as they appear. It underscores how love, betrayal, and desperation can intersect with tragic consequences.
It really makes you think about the secrets people keep and the lengths they'll go to protect them.
Precisely. This case is a chilling reminder that truth often lies somewhere between different narratives, leaving us to ponder the complexities of the human experience. And it makes you wonder, in a case like this, with so much ambiguity, can we ever truly know what happened?
Right. It leaves you with more questions than answers. And that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explored the intricate and haunting case of Gregory de Villers.
If you enjoyed this video and want to dive deeper into more cases like this one, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to like the video if you found the story compelling, and share it with your friends and family who might be interested in true crime and mysteries. By subscribing, you'll stay up to date with all our latest content and join a growing community of curious minds exploring the most fascinating cases. Click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything.